I wanted to talk about my red pill moment, and whenever I mention being red pilled, I don't mean in the sense of the red pill movement that people often think about whenever it comes to culture and society. I'm only using it in the context of television and movie franchises that I grew up loving, and how I was awakened to the agendas behind that and how the franchises are being destroyed nowadays. But to know a little bit about me, I am a casual watcher of these. I'm not somebody who spent years or decades in person in nerd spaces talking and debating these things. I was just a casual person who just really enjoyed them. I'm a Christian conservative, and I also consider myself an escapist. There are things where whenever I go in to watch this movie, watch this television show, play this video game, I like it to be an escape from all the stuff going on in the world. I am an escapist in that sense, and I'm also a casual person whenever it comes to these. So I didn't get into the deep nerd spaces of these, and I'm not knocking that. It's just I was always casual with these, right? And I think that perspective is really important for this because there's more casual people out there than there are people who are like deep into the lore, deep into the nerd spaces, having like discussions for years and years on the finer points of these franchises and stuff. And so there's going to be more casual people out there, and this is my kind of testimony as one of them. And I bet there are stories like this all over the place, probably millions of people at this point. The three main franchises I'm going to talk about today are Star Wars, Star Trek, and the MCU. When it comes to Star Wars, the original trilogy came out before I was born, but I always had those movies in my life. I liked them as a kid. I watched them as a kid. Whenever episode 1 came out, I was 9 years old, so it was very much catered to an audience like me. I grew up on those. I always liked the prequels. I always liked the original trilogies. I never got into anything outside the 6 movies, but I did really enjoy the 6 movies. And then you come to Star Trek. I was raised on The Next Generation. I absolutely love The Next Generation. I've watched through it many times. I've watched through Deep Space Nine, thought that was fantastic. I'm really enjoying the original series right now, and I kind of skipped around a little bit in Voyager, but I didn't. Voyager is still good, in my opinion. And then we come to the MCU. I was there at the beginning of the MCU. Midnight premiere of Iron Man 2008. I was there when it got kicked off. Iron Man is a fantastic movie, and I was there when this phenomenon started, and I followed it all the way through. I've seen every MCU movie in theaters except for the first Guardians of the Galaxy because I had just had a child right before that, so didn't make it to that one. But otherwise, I've seen every MCU movie in theaters, and I'd been following it from the beginning. But I never read comic books. I've never read a comic book in my life. I can only speak on what the MCU has put out. I can't go any deeper than that. Like I said, I am a casual, and I know that. So I like to believe that I was enjoying all the modern stuff that these franchises were putting out. Or was I? And that's kind of the point behind my red pill moment, is whenever these things started going downhill, I was saying I liked them, but there was something not sitting right with me. And so we'll use Star Wars first. The Force Awakens, I walked out of that, I was like, that was a fantastic movie, that was great. And in my defense, a lot of people who now look back and see it as problematic, a lot of people did like it, and it took some time for it to set in, to see where the franchise went, to go back and be like, okay, no, this actually isn't very good. And I was one of those. But then you have The Last Jedi, and I walked out of that, and I was like, that was a fantastic movie. Everybody needs to see The Last Jedi. And I defended it for like 2 years. I'm like, I don't understand why people don't like this. And then you have The Rise of Skywalker. I saw that 3 times in theaters. Not because I just thought it was that great that I had to see it 3 times, but it was because I saw it when it came out. I saw it with my girlfriend, and then I saw it whenever I had an opportunity. My mom wanted to watch it with me and my brothers. So I went and watched it. So I saw it 3 times, and it was something where I was trying to justify why this movie was so good, and I was arguing towards that end, but I always remembered that it was underwhelming and I couldn't explain why, and I didn't think about it, but there was the cognitive dissonance in my mind that I wasn't embracing, because you got to understand, I was coming into these with rose-tinted glasses. I loved these franchises growing up, and I wanted to like them. I wanted to. And so whenever things weren't sitting right, I just ignored it, and I was trying to focus on anything positive I could. And then we come to the MCU. Black Widow comes out as the first MCU movie after Endgame, barring Spider-Man Far From Home. This was the one that kicked off Phase 4. And I was expecting a huge build-up because they didn't release it on Disney+. They waited during the pandemic to release it in theaters. And so I walked out of it and I was like, that was a really good movie. And I was like, but there was something in me that was like, it was anticlimactic and a little bit disappointing. I didn't focus on it, though. I didn't look at that. Then Shang-Chi comes out and I was like, great movie. Everybody go see it. Then The Eternals, I was like, that was a good movie. Everybody should go see it. But I was like, that one is where the cracks really started to show. but I wasn't paying attention to it. I wanted to like these rose-tinted glasses. I still wanted to defend the MCU at this point. And then Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness comes out, and same exact story. Great movie. Everybody go see it. Something wasn't right, though. And then you have the Disney Plus shows. WandaVision. I really liked WandaVision, but then by the time it ended, I wanted to justify why it had a good ending, even though it didn't. You have the Falcon and the Winter Soldier. It had some messaging in it, but it wasn't too overt. It's fine, right? Because like I said, I'm Christian conservative. I've been against wokeism, forever. So whenever I go into these, I'm looking for it. And when it was overt, I was just like, okay, this is garbage. But I was like, it's not that overt. It's there, and I don't appreciate that. But hey, focus on the story, and it's good. That's how I thought about that. And then Loki comes out, and I was like, this is great. And I was like, still didn't sit right with me. Something didn't sit right. And then Hawkeye comes out, and I was like, it was good. Everybody watch Hawkeye. Something's wrong, though. And then you have Moon Knight. It was good. Something doesn't sit right. So then let's come to Star Trek Picard, because I didn't watch really any of the modern Star Trek, but then I watched Star Trek Picard because I love The Next Generation. I went into Picard Season 1, and by the time it ended, I was like, that was really good. But something wasn't sitting right, and I just wasn't thinking about it. It was cognitive dissonance, and I see that looking back. I defended it. I told people to watch it. I was like, Picard Season 1 was good. Then Picard Season 2 comes out, and I was watching that as it was being released, and I got to Episode 3, and by the time I got to Episode 3, I was like, I don't know about this. It's like I couldn't ignore it anymore. And then Episode 4 comes out, and I found myself being unable to watch it. Like, I just did not sit down to watch Episode 4. And then, the series kept coming out, and I never went back to watch it. And I finally, at that point, I was like, this show isn't good. I'm like, they are inserting all this stuff. Like, why is 7 of 9, batting for the other team now? Like, she had the Chakotay, and this was never hinted at in Voyager. It's like, oh, that one guy, this is obviously, they come back to, I think it's 2024, and there's immigration allegories there, but it's not even an allegory. It's just straight up like preaching in your face. You have Guinan, who's existing on Earth, pessimistic and cynical because people who look like her aren't treated very well. I'm like, what is this? That's not Guinan. And what, this is 2024. Like, what kind of world did they think we lived in 2024? And so the messaging just became so overt, I couldn't deny it anymore. And the show just wasn't good either. And so I didn't watch Picard Season 2, and that's whenever the red pill moment happened, because Picard Season 2 was so bad I couldn't finish it, and then I had to figure out what is going on. So then I started looking into other YouTubers, and they were putting words to the thoughts I had in my mind. I found The Critical Drinker, I found Nerdrotic, the Geeks and Gamers guy, Mauler, Heel versus Babyface. Like, I stumbled upon these guys, and I was listening to their words. I'm like, yes, they are putting it into words, my thoughts. I was at a point where I was okay to embrace them and to consider them. The rose-tinted glasses came off, the red pill was down, and I was able to go back and re-examine everything that I watched. And I'm like, you know what? Black Widow was crap. Shang-Chi wasn't very good. Eternals was pure hot garbage. Doctor Strange 2 was not a good movie. And then I go through the shows. Falcon and the Winter Soldier was abhorrent. Loki they cucked Loki, and he wasn't even the main character. Hawkeye wasn't the main character in his own show. Moon Knight was barely in his own show as Moon Knight, right? Picard Season 1 was just awful. It was dark and cynical, but I was so attracted to those dangling keys of nostalgia bait. So these guys were able to put words to thoughts that I already had. They didn't recruit me. They didn't radicalize me or anything like that. It was just a matter of they put words to thoughts that I was now willing to embrace. So then moving forward, these franchises continue to put stuff out. I go to see Thor 4. I actively hated that movie. I thought it was so bad that the first half I was like, this is a satire movie. This is parody. This isn't a real movie. It was that bad. I actively hated it. Wakanda Forever was long and boring. Ant-Man 3 was awful. The Marvels was cartoonishly stupid. And then Star Wars comes out with Kenobi, and Kenobi was so bad, I had no more faith in Star Wars after that. I haven't watched anything Star Wars because Kenobi was just that bad, that damaging to the brand. Lest I be considered a cynic, there has been good things to come out of these franchises in recent years. You have Spider-Man No Way Home. That was a really good movie. It was a great movie. Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 was a great movie. Ironically, it was also one of the most disconnected from the MCU. And probably the most ironic thing to come out that I'm actually praising is Picard Season 3, because Season 2 was so bad I didn't finish it and it red-pilled me. Season 3 comes out. I had no intention of seeing it, but the word of mouth was so strong. I watched it, and I loved it, and I consider it a really good love letter to the fans to say goodbye on a high note to the next generation. So this hasn't been something that I am rejoicing in, the red pill about these franchises that I grew up and was loving as a casual person. I think it's terrible. I don't like what has happened, and these franchises are dying or are just completely dead. To me, Star Wars is dead. Star Trek is dead. The MCU is dead. I'll even say The Witcher, because I followed that show on Netflix. Witcher is dead. That became a garbage show. And I'm not going to speak to franchises that I wasn't into myself, but in the nerd spaces, people are talking about the desecration of Indiana Jones, Lord of the Rings with the Rings of Power. You have Doctor Who. Like, these are dead and dying brands now that people have grown up and loved for sometimes decades. So there's many other examples behind the main three that I'm talking about now. But I want to emphasize that I'm not coming in as a cynic. I'm not coming in as somebody who just wants to crap all over these things. They had me. I was a fan. They had me. They had won me over. I loved these things. I had been following them for years, and I wanted to like them, and I tried to like them. I actively tried to like them, but they were just so bad, and the messaging became so overt to take away from the story, to take away from talent and good writing, that I couldn't deny it anymore, and I eventually came out of that and could see them for what they are. I have my headcanon of what was really good and what I can still enjoy today, but what they're putting out today, these are dead and dying franchises now, and it sucks, to be quite frank. And despite what you might read on Twitter/X, despite what you might see from feminists or charlatans on TikTok, or despite what you might read by somebody on one of these many failing media franchises in a blog or an article, I'm not saying this because of racism or sexism or any kind of bigotry. None of us are. It's not about that. We just want good TV. We want good cinema. We want good books, comic books, storytelling, video games, all that. And I just pray that many good, new, wonderful franchises rise out of the ashes of all these dead and dying brands. So that is my red pill moment. Star Trek Picard Season 2 was so bad, it red pilled somebody who wanted desperately to love all these franchises, but instead it woke me up to the reality behind them.